Hey, I'm going to start with these two slides here. Go to the. So first, who are our enemies? Okay, we're going to talk about enemies today. All right. So here, this class was actually inspired by this couple graphs that I saw in The Economist. Now, what's important here, Bro, do you have a pointer? I think I have to use this one. What's important here is that on the right side, even though the graphs look really large, and they didn't do this on purpose to persuade you to think a certain thing. It's just because it's the best way to show the graph. So this is this idea that Canada is an unfriendly country or an enemy, all right? And so if we come down here, 2016, at the start of the first Trump administration, I mean, just even going back, if we kept going back, it's basically, less than 5% of the American public. I mean, it fluctuates between 3, 4, and 5%, really. And so the red are the Republicans, blues are Democrats, and then look what happens. It kind of goes up and then down a little bit, and then they kind of almost meet again, and then suddenly, under Biden, it starts to take off, and it's like, whoa, like what happened here with these people that they got the message that Canada is our enemy, whereas these people here, they don't seem to have changed very much. They went up a little bit, so, but that's pretty significant. Bro, do you have any thoughts on that? You're from Colombia, right? You're an international student?
Yeah, I'm Colombian.
Oh, wait, introduce yourself. Sorry, man. Yeah.
My name is Lorenzo. I'm a junior studying aerospace, and I'm Colombian, but I've lived in several different countries.
What do you think of this, though, as an outsider? You're listening to some of the conversations here in the U.S., as someone who's not a U.S. citizen. Do you have any thought on that, by the way?
Well, I do think, it's very significant how it spiked recently, the perspective that Canada is a non-friendly country to the U.S., given the trade history both countries have, and how close trade partners they've both been. Do
you hear it, though, as someone who's living here? Do you hear this conversation about Canada?
Not amongst people, but definitely amongst the media.
Okay.
I know President Trump has had his fair words to say about Canada recently.
Yeah, so those come through to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
They do.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that it was already going up among Republicans. And then, so Trump really started talking trash about Canada or whatever, right? Somewhere right in here. So, it was already on its way up. It's just so interesting how the idea of an enemy can shift, right? So here's my thought. Do you think these people here, or these people here, any of them, think that they've been persuaded by something outside of their own thoughts? Do you think that they would say, no, I've just come to think about this issue differently?
Do you mean a new voice has had some sort of influence on this?
Yeah. Or is it all these individuals in the U.S. who are just collectively deciding that are collectively deciding that Canada is our enemy?
I definitely do think some of the stuff that has been said recently has to influence with it, especially if you see just how the Republican and Democrat curves change, right? Because, we have a Republican president right now, and if he's talking about how we're going to put tariffs on everyone, and, well, Canada was in that equation not too long ago. I know the tariffs were paused for 90 days. And, I feel like a lot of the Republican crowd, what they will hear in the news is what Trump says, right? Or the Trump administration says, and they will hear that. And at the end of the day, that's the president they voted for, and they have their faith on the president, and that will sway their opinions on stuff.
Yeah, so they're more likely to believe something that he says, as opposed to if it was Biden. And the other side, if Biden was the one saying Canada's an enemy, then maybe the Republican voters would be like, I don't know if I believe that guy.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, there's a very big crowd, not just here in America, but everywhere in the world, that I feel like people forget to their own research sometimes and just hear the big voices and what they have to say.
Yeah.
For example, if this was the case of Biden saying that Canada was an enemy, then, I mean, you could expect to see a similar trend to this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, right? I think for me, one of the lessons I'm always trying to show is that we're all following most of the time, right? We're not making individual decisions distinctly on our own. We're following, and that's why we see these trends. It's like groups of people. Hey, can you go to the next slide? I think there's another one here. Oh, so here's one. How this shifts right here. I'm going to look to the right. So this is Russia is an unfriendly country or an enemy. So the Democrat, they kind of come together here, right? Kind of at the, as we begin to lead up to the Ukraine war, and we stick together. And then suddenly it really shifts, the same thing. And it starts to go down, thinking like, oh, it's not unfriendly, right? So fewer Republican voters are saying that Russia's unfriendly because, once again, their leader is telling them, hey, man, these folks aren't unfriendly. Whereas down here, Ukraine is unfriendly. Here it goes up again, because of the leadership, because, we follow what our leaders say. So, yeah, it's really fascinating to me. Does that surprise you at all? As an outsider? Outsider, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that trend is really interesting, how just the perspective of who's an enemy and who's not.
Dude, it's almost like overnight. You suddenly have this person who's, like, hey, we're on this side and not on this side. And then suddenly it just switches. It's like, wait, hang on a second. Wait, I thought we were supporting this group and not that group and that group and not this group. And it's like, and then what it makes me wonder about is this decision about enemies, how random it is, right? So let me ask you, do you have enemies?
No, not at all.
You don't have personal enemies?
No. No enemies.
Do you, as a citizen of Colombia, have enemies?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah? You don't see it like that?
No.
Mm-hmm. Can we go to the next slide? So, can you explain what's going on with Venezuela and Colombia really fast?
Well, this has been going on forever, right? For a very long time. And, well, it essentially just Venezuela's going through some very hard political times. Their president, Nicolás Maduro, has been in power, I think it's over 12 years now he's been in power, since 2013, I think. And yeah, I mean, Venezuela has gone through some horrible economic times. Thanks to him, they suffered one of the worst hyperinflations I think they suffered the worst hyperinflation in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And
not the history of the world, but a really big one. Yeah.
Okay. And this led to a lot of Venezuelan immigration outside of the country, and as you can see on the map, Colombia shares a really big border with Venezuela, and so that's where most of the Venezuelan immigrants started shifting towards.
And they at least go through Colombia on their way to Ecuador or Chile or Brazil or wherever they're going, or to the United States.
Yeah. Or even to travel to other countries, because I know Venezuela has a lot of travel restrictions with other countries. So
62% in 62% of the Colombian population said they had a really unfavorable opinion of Venezuelans. So why? What was that about? What would you say that's about?
Well, I have a pretty good idea what that's about. It's I don't know the exact statistics, but there's a lot of Venezuelan immigration to Colombia. And in big cities like Bogota, you see a very prevalent Venezuelan population. And a lot of these people that move out of the country are pretty poor. So you've started to see a lot more poverty in the city, a lot more crime. But I mean, these are all factors that are influenced by socioeconomic status.
So Venezuelans, the economy crashes. Venezuelans are trying to survive. It's really hard to survive in Venezuela unless you're from the upper class, right? People coming through Colombia, people who even were middle class in Venezuela, suddenly, a school teacher that's suddenly in Venezuela is making $60 a month. And, a dozen eggs cost $5. So you're really barely surviving. So all these people are leaving, coming through Colombia. And then the Colombians have an unfavorable opinion because just seeing so many people.
Yeah. And crime has gone up a lot, as I said before.
It's gone up some, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I feel like, it's a very similar opinion to what Americans that are not in favor of people immigrating to the country. It's a very similar scenario because a lot of them are not immigrating to the country legally, and they're coming in, and Colombia has resources to help out these. Well, I guess you can call them. These people who are migrating.
Like economic refugees. Really.
Yeah, economic refugees. That's what I wanted to say.
So here's my question for you. You said you don't have any enemies. At what point in time what would have to happen with Venezuela to make Venezuela an enemy?
I feel like a country it has two things. It has its people, it has its government, and you can't really consider a country an enemy just because of what its government is doing, right? These are all just people trying to make the best of their lives.
In the border there, really in a certain sense, is kind of artificial, right? Because the Venezuelans and Colombians, you're the same people, really.
Yeah, I mean, the main passing point from Venezuela to Colombia is up there in Cucuta. That's where where most of them come through, since most of them are coming from the north, which is like Venezuela's more densely populated region, I believe, and more towards the south. It's, I believe, more jungle, similar to what you would see like in the Amazon in Brazil.
So go back again. What would happen? What would have to happen to you? What situation would have to occur for you, Lorenzo, to say, wait, hang on a second. These people actually are my enemy. Like what could happen that would lead you to go there? To think that?
I don't think anything. I mean, I'll share a personal story right now. My brother was robbed at gunpoint by a Venezuelan immigrant, and I still have no resentment towards Venezuelans. I just feel like it's what we've been talking about in class a lot recently. There's good people everywhere, there's bad people everywhere, and there's people who are just acting to make their lives better in some sort of way.
So your brother was robbed at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And you in your mind say, hey, that's somebody who robbed my brother, but there's 500,000 Venezuelans living in Bogota alone, right? A city of 8 million people, you got 500,000 Venezuelans. So it's like, damn, all right. So in your mind you say, all right, there's 500,000, and this person is one person. I
mean, you gotta see them for... you got to see them as, this is, like a delinquent. Like, like you can't generalize, just because this Venezuelan robbed my brother, you can't do that, right?
But
there's a lot of Colombian delinquents too,
Yeah. Have you been, people in your family have been robbed by Colombians, I'm sure, at some point. Somebody's been robbed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that leads other Colombians to make that step to say, oh wait, we got to get rid of these people because they've now become our enemies, right? They're taking too much from us. They're this, they're doing that.
Well, I think maybe a lot of it is the younger generation that maybe I know Colombia last century went through some very hard times, and I know Venezuela was a very friendly country that received a lot of Colombians that immigrated to Venezuela when Venezuela was prospering financially to look for better economic opportunities. So the way I see it, the way my family sees it, is that this is just something that Colombia is doing back for Venezuela, right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
They're countries that have shared a friendship over not recently, but over in the past for extended periods of history.
And I made a comment earlier, like the border, in a certain sense, all these borders are artificial.
Yeah.
So before the Spanish came, there was no border there between Colombia and Venezuela.
No.
So
Colombia and Venezuela were the same country at
a
given point in time.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that shifts. Can you go to the next slide? So last March, in like October. Was it October? I think it was October. I was in Bogota, and I met this man and his daughter, and the daughter, she was like really, they're Venezuelans, and I was on the Calle 15.
Yeah. I've been there.
So the daughter was really, really precocious, and I was like, hey, wait. They were asking for money, and they wanted to buy milk. They had an infant child. They walked all the way from Venezuela, man. They had an infant child at home with the mother, and or there was a wife, and they wanted milk. And I'm like, wait, hang on a second, man. Like, what? So I said, hey, why don't you come and talk in my class and tell your story? And the next day, this was like a Tuesday, I said, come back. I'll meet you here on a Thursday. We'll talk in my class. So we live streamed them in the class, and the little girl was like, she's really intense, really funny, really precocious. And I'm like, and you just fall in love with her, and she's really cool. And anyway, we raised money for them. The class donated like $1,000, and someone watching the live stream doubled it to $2,000, and I gave it to them. And Julie gave it to them when I wired it down to Julie. And, it bought they didn't have their passports. They didn't have Venezuelan passports. They didn't have work permits in Bogota. They had nothing. And so the money that we gave them paid for all of the permits that they could have to work. And so the kids could go to school in Colombia. So anyway, so we did that. And I was thinking, you got to, when you meet them, like for you, like you've met a lot of Venezuelans, right? When you meet people up front, like face to face, it just changes everything, right? Like them, the moment you start talking, you can have any vision you have, even about here in the United States, about undocumented immigrants. But like, how many people know undocumented immigrants? How many people have sat down and talked to someone and become friends with them? And like, it's a lot harder to have these kind of opinions about who is our enemies, all that kind of stuff. So, it's a wild story, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I do feel like those types of stories, people who've literally had to sacrifice everything, and like this guy walked, I don't know how many thousands of kilometers, because that's
it's a long way, man. They were coming from Caracas.
Yeah, walking from Caracas to Bogota, that's a very long journey, and I feel like if people listen to stuff like this, I feel like they'd feel a little more empathy for the immigration situation here in the U.S.
Well, at least you feel, at least it complicates it, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, like when I'm in Bogota and there's so many Venezuelans, man, and they're always asking for money and they're asking for something. And I'm walking down the street and it's like one family after another, and I'm just like, God, after a while, I just do this. I give my money out, and then I just go here. I can't take it anymore. And so there's that, like, annoyance you get, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, but I feel like, everywhere in South America, like even before even before the whole Venezuela incident happened, I feel like that's just been what's happening in Colombia.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? When people need money and
I feel you see over there, you've seen homeless people your whole life. There's always someone at the stoplights putting on a show to try and get some money. This is not like something that was brought up onto us by Venezuelan immigration. This is a problem that's been existing.
Mm-hmm. And so you would say, hey, just meet people, connect with people, hear their stories, and I don't know, maybe the people we think are enemies are not necessarily our enemies.
I agree.
And the people who we're told are our enemies may or may not be our enemies.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone... Enemies at all, man. It's just such a strange thing. And for me to see anybody saying that Canadians are our enemies, I'm just like, Canadians? Like what, man? Come on. Whether they're Republicans or Democrats or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Huh. All right, man. Okay. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah.
I looked up the map for between the two. It's 1,300 kilometers. And if you walk, it'll take you 318 hours. If you drive, it'll be 24 straight hours of driving.
318 hours?
Yeah.
Walking?
Walking.
Damn, imagine doing that with an infant child and then a young girl. And people come, man. There was this guy that when I was there last time, hey, you guys can come on up. When I was there a couple, maybe a year and a half ago in Bogota, there was a guy that had come, and he had flip-flops, and he came all the way from Caracas in flip-flops, and I was like, dude, is that it? You came in those shoes? You mentioned like walking. Hey, it's crazy. And he's like, yeah. And the guy had nothing at all. So I was like, dude, hang on here, man. And I went home and I got him some shoes. They were like 2 sizes too large, but he had some shoes, man. I mean, it's crazy, right? So you can't help everybody, but that guy got a pair of shoes. All right, listen. Let's introduce yourselves, and then we'll...
Hi, my name is Dasha. I'm a second-year student studying criminology with a minor in political science, and I'm from Ukraine.
When you say you're from Ukraine, when did you come here to the U.S.?
I came to the United States at the end of 2021, so it's going to be 4 years.
Wait, were you speaking English in Ukraine?
No, I moved here, couldn't speak any English at all.
Seriously? Wait, you've been studying English for 4 years?
I mean, I did know like some basics, but I wasn't able to have a conversation with people, and I wasn't able to really understand them fully, so I just had to pick it up in high school and like college, first year of college.
Irvin, what do you think about that? She speaks English better than we do, my friend.
It's not uncommon in the world.
No, it's not uncommon in the world, but you clearly have an ear for the language. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So your family, are you from Kyiv? Where are you from?
So I have family in Ukraine in a lot of parts. So I was born in Uzhhorod, which is like the west side of Ukraine. It borders with Poland, Hungary, and like all of those NATO. I do have family in occupied parts of Ukraine, in just like everywhere, but yeah, here and there.
Got you. Okay. All right, Sonia.
Yeah, my name is Sonia. I'm majoring in aerospace engineering, minoring in math. I'm a third year, and I'm from Moscow, Russia.
And when did you come to the U.S.?
Right after war started, like March 2022.
And were you studying English in Russia?
I was studying, like we all in Slavic countries, we have a little bit of English as a second language. So I was doing a little bit of basic stuff, but I actually started talking when I came here.
Uh-huh. Wow, so same with you. Like your English is... Okay, Julie, mira, imagina mi español y he hablado hace, no sé, 40 años casi. He estado hablando casi 40 años. Puta madre. Okay. Dude. See, okay. Gregory.
Hi, my name is Gregory. I'm a senior studying econ. So I'm from Moscow, Russia, and I actually did my first 2 years of college in Moscow and then transferred to Penn State.
And you're here as your college, not as an exchange student.
Yeah, as a college.
Where'd you go in Moscow? What was your
Higher School of Economics.
Yeah? All right. You know, okay, so here. So you all, so there's a conflict going on, and it's quite a serious conflict, right? How is it for the three of you who represent different sides of the conflict to be just sitting here with your classmates, Penn State classmates?
I mean, personally, I don't have any problems with people who are from Russia. I have a lot of friends from Russia. It's more about having this problem with the government and with the things that government does rather than with people itself.
So I want to ask the question to you that I asked of Lorenzo. Do you have enemies?
I wouldn't say that I have enemies. Okay, yeah, no, I do.
Yeah. Well, who are your enemies?
I would say the government that is going out there killing civilians, innocent kids, innocent people, elderly people. I just don't think that that's a good thing to do. Let's put it like that. I don't think it's something moral and human-like. I wouldn't say that it's like enemy, because, you know, but it's still something that hurts me and something that I would rather not see nowadays in the 21st century, in 2025.
So you would just use the word enemies loosely in that sense?
I mean, absolutely, I dislike it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it like,
Yeah.
I have some negative feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if I'm gonna talk about like Sonia in here, right? She is supportive of whatever is happening, like on my side, not supportive of like genocide and other things.
Uh-huh.
And I can't just assume that all people who are Russians are bad, and I can't just like hold the grudge on them just because they were born and raised in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sonia, how about you? Like, how do you see? Do you have enemies? Like, what are you?
I do have enemies.
Yeah, who are your enemies?
It's
Hang on,
it's
Lorenzo. They have enemies, my friend. So listen carefully. You might have enemies too. So
it's weird because like Dasha is Ukrainian and she was like so kind about it and everything, so soft. I do have enemies, and I absolutely hate people who support war. And these are my like biggest enemies, I would say, and I would never talk to these people, communicate in any way. Unfortunately, I have, if I think about that, I do have people who are like closely related to me and supported war, because I mean, I live in Russia, so it's not gonna happen that everyone is against it, right? So unfortunately, I had to either burn the bridges or just get used to not communicating with these people. It just bothers me too much, because for me it's not only about politics, it's about who you are as a human. Like if you support that, I don't think there's anything we can talk about, even if it's not related to politics. So I do absolutely have enemies.
I'm just letting a lot of ideas percolate down, you know. Gregory, you see, you're in a different position, right? Because you're going whatever. You're going back to Russia. You like have,
Yeah.
Do you have enemies?
I wouldn't say that I have enemies, and I wouldn't say that Russians perceive Ukrainians as enemies, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, because we were all part of a big country, like Russians, Ukrainians, Belarus people. I don't know how it is for Ukrainians. We see them as like our brothers, sort of.
Yeah.
And even if you know, like Dasha, right? Dasha was talking about genocide, but I wouldn't agree with that because even if we look, I've checked some data before coming here, and
well, let me just ask you
yeah.
this question: do you, before we go there, I don't want to. So, if I'm walking in the streets in Russia, the average person isn't seeing the average Ukrainian as an enemy.
no.
Just like in the United States, the average person isn't seeing truly, even people say, oh, that Canadians are our enemies, but really most people aren't.
I would say more Russians would view U.S. as an enemy.
Yeah, would view the U.S., yeah. And most Americans, truthfully, wouldn't be saying that about the Canadians. Like, people just are kind of following. And so people aren't really thinking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so.
They go along. And then people, like you are not, none of you are responsible for what these, well, first off, the two of you are in the U.S. now, so this is different, right? You have residency here, but not citizenship, but you both have residency, right? Okay, so they're not responsible for what, like, Trump is doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and you're not responsible for what Putin is doing.
I guess so.
Well, do you feel responsible?
No, like I don't really care. Like I remember Sonia was talking here that she's like a bit of ashamed that she's Russian. Like if someone thinks that the fact that I'm Russian is some kind of a problem, I don't care about them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to you, right? Same with me. Like if I go somewhere, a lot of these Americans right now, there's a lot of conversation about Americans traveling now. I'm starting to see it in social media and people saying like, hey, when you travel now, people are going to have all these ideas about you and hate on you and so on and so forth, right?
Like no one cares about you, to be honest. Like you're the last thing anyone cares about.
So if Americans go to Russia right now, people are going to just ignore them, basically.
Yeah.
Just
they're going to be like American in Russia, like, okay, like that's cool, but
yeah,
you're not going to get oppressed or anything.
Yeah, let's go have
unless
a beer.
you like come with wheat, like Brittany Griner or something.
Oh yeah, right. And then they might be annoyed if you don't share it with them, you know. Let me.
Can I say the part that I see when I go back to Russia?
Yeah.
I was back there exactly a year ago, and people do care about Ukraine, and people do hate Ukraine there.
Yeah.
And
no, they hate they become Ukrainians become the enemies.
Exactly, yeah. I mean,
why do you think so? Like, what do you think it is that what do people see?
Propaganda.
The people you were talking to, what do people see?
Just for context, my ex-boyfriend's mother, she would just watch TV the entire time, and she would just like hear this propaganda and just believe it. Like, I'm not even lying, there would be scenes using green screen that would kind of like portray Ukrainians being like mean to Russians or doing something to Russians.
Yeah.
So this propaganda goes on national TV, and Russians see it and they believe it. So and then they go and they tell their kids about it, and then their kids tell their friends about it, and this is how it goes.
So how different is that than pretty much anywhere else in the world?
It is. I feel like it's a little different. There are levels.
A little different.
There are levels to this. That's the thing. You know, in America, there are a lot of propaganda as well, as you know. Mm-hmm. But still, like, this country has the freedom of speech, right? Even though sometimes it's like not actually true and everything, but still there is freedom of speech. Still you can publish something and not being like sent to prison for that. This does not happen in Russia. Like, I know that
at the same level.
Exactly, yeah. So our family friend, I don't know, maybe people on YouTube will know that, Her name is Zhenya Berkovich, and she was actually writing scripts and just little poems.
Yeah.
She was sent to prison while having adopted kids. She was a single mother. She was sent to prison,
Okay.
and no one cared
Well,
because she was pro-Ukrainian.
yeah, okay. I hear that. Listen.
Can I get into this one a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like technically there are laws which prohibit you from like propaganda against Russian army and from
Yeah, you can't promote propaganda.
Yeah,
you can't
like
say things
that's
against
that's
the
a thing
Russian
which
army.
started like
Yeah.
when the conflict started, and there's also like TikTok is not working in Russia not because it got banned or something, but
Yeah.
because they are afraid that they're going to be sued for misinformation.
Yeah.
So I don't see how if you are pro-Ukrainian in Russia and you break a law, like that's a bit of your problem, kind of. Like if you want to be pro-Ukrainian, leave the country.
Okay, so that's the idea. No, here, let me just throw this out in your way. So right now, we're struggling with this in the United States, okay? That immigrants who are here, who break laws, a bunch of people just got sent back, right? Are getting sent back to their country, getting their visas revoked, okay? So breaking a law.
Yeah.
So whether the law is just or not, it doesn't really matter. Right here, we don't have any laws against. You can speak out against the U.S. Army or U.S. military or whatever. There's no laws against that. Yet, we might have some coming up. And by the time we do have some, when we start having those laws, you're going to watch the number of Americans who support that. It starts down here, and then it's going to start to grow and grow and grow because people are going to start to accept the narrative that it's a bad idea to critique the military of the U.S. government, right? They're going to start, and so it's going to start here. Hang on, and we're going to get it. It's going to start here, and then it's going to grow, and suddenly Americans will be like, yeah, of course you can't speak out against the president of the United States or the government or something. Like, that just becomes a thing. And then you got to ask, like, okay, well, it's a law now, so da-da-da. You're sort of saying
Yeah,
that in a
like
way.
it doesn't mean that I support this law. I'm just saying that it's a law, and we are kind of like in this not the best position ever, and it's we are in a conflict, and so that's one of the things why this law was implemented. It's
Got you. So listen, so here's what you're saying. You're doing this thing that you're just speaking what is. There's a sociologist friend of mine calls this like naturalistic sociology. You're just saying like, this is just what is. There's a law there. You can't break the law. If you break the law, then whatever. You're not saying it's a good thing. You're just saying like, yeah, well, that's what it is.
Yeah, kind of.
Basically.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you know why the law is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a conflict, and like we don't want to have any kind of not misunderstanding, but you don't want any more problems inside the country when you are like at this big of a crisis.
Dude.
Yeah,
dude,
but
hang
don't
on,
you think this
hang
is a
on.
dictatorship?
No, hang on. That's a different story. This is naturalistic sociology here in a second, right? Dude, am I right on that? Naturalistic? Got it? Okay, man. Look, he's not saying it's right or wrong. This is really, really interesting. He's saying, look, man, we're in the middle of a war. Forget about whether the war is just, doesn't matter, the secondary, it's irrelevant, right? You're in the middle of a war. You got to control your population. And so you can't have people like undermining what this thing is about. The government, whatever it is, the government maybe didn't get elected democratically. Let's assume I followed the elections in Russia. I wouldn't go to Vegas and bet on the fact that the recent elections that put Putin in power were truly fair and democratic.
But to be honest, he would win even if he weren't fair.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Okay, so the point being, it's not any of that. It's just like, yeah, well, that's what it is. So then,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So going back to like the enemy conversation, right? I was in Ukraine visiting my family because I still have, it's just me, my mom, and like my stepdad who's been here for the past like 30 years, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was visiting my friends, my family in there, right? And it is very scary in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna say this, and Gregory saying that obviously there's, you know, like if you were as Ukrainian gonna go to Russia, they're not gonna hate on you, but we all have social medias, right? And it is really common. For example, you have Ukrainian flag in your bio. For people to start texting you, oh, I wish you this and this and that. I'm not gonna say whatever.
Yeah, no, I hear
right?
that.
But and this hate comes from what Sonia said,
Yeah.
right? From this brainwashing, from this propaganda, and there's people who don't really get themselves into it. They don't learn about it. They just
Yeah.
go with whatever government says, as you mentioned earlier. And I think that a lot of this hate is unreasonable because, again, there's people who didn't do anything. I've seen people struggling with it, moving from cities to cities,
Yeah.
losing their houses, losing their jobs, and just because this is happening, there's obviously some hate coming on us,
Well-
because otherwise it wouldn't be a thing.
Well, here, let me ask you this, right? Let me ask you this. Right now, in the United States, with tariffs and so on, right? You don't have any control over that, right? So you can be against it, for it, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You have no control over it. So, in fact, any opinion you have, whether you support the tariffs or are against the tariffs, it goes against half the population, because half the population supports and half the population is against. So people are going to look at you and be like, hey, you're not on our team. You're not on our side. So therefore, you become the enemies. You're on the other side.
Yeah, and I totally understand that, and I totally understand that there's different views, different opinions, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter that you're a bad person just because you think differently than I do, but I'm just acknowledging the fact that I feel like it is wrong to be saying for everyone in there that there's no hate and nobody's going to do anything to you.
No, hang on. Though, I think that, hey, Gregory, I think you were speaking in the way that I speak. Like, hey, man, look, first off, I've only been in St. Petersburg in Russia, so I don't know. Yeah, it's like, but most people are living their lives, just getting on with their lives, not paying attention to.
Like, I wouldn't say that they don't pay attention because, you know, it's kind of like a big thing.
No, you pay attention at a certain level, but you're busy inside your own life.
Yeah, I would say that there were like, maybe then it all started, it was like a couple of first 2 months maybe, then everyone was like, okay, it is what it is, everyone's house that it ends as soon as possible, and then there are some kind of like, you know, big spikes in your interest when something happens.
And
like,
then,
I would say that we were like outside of like the start of military operation.
Yeah.
There was like 2 more spikes than I don't know if you know like Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was when he started his he started going towards Moscow, and like he captured one of the biggest cities in Russia. That was like, you know, a bit of a spike in interest, and I would say then the mobilization like of the troops started. That was also one. So like in the past 2 years, nothing big that would make everyone pay attention happened.
All right, so here, before we go, can you go, Jeff, there's a slide of, can you go to the next one, actually? Come back. So, listen, so these guys, these Ukrainian soldiers, bro, are they your enemy?
Not mine specifically.
Not your enemy, yeah. But they are the enemy of the other soldiers. Here, can you go back one? The Russian soldiers, right? They're the enemy of these guys. But they're not your enemy.
I didn't know in personally to say that, so.
Yeah, so for you, it's just a thing. Hey, the Russian soldiers, right? So these are, I mean, for you, you're Russian, right? Are they the enemy?
Personally, for me, yeah.
You would say so?
Yeah, they're my enemies.
Why are they an enemy?
Because there's always a choice. You're making a conscious choice, whether to go or not to go. Even if you're on contract, whatever it is,
but
you make a choice.
But if you don't go, I mean, the Russians, the Russian government is throwing a lot of people in prison and so on who aren't going.
Then you're just choosing. You're just choosing to be human. Yeah. And you're choosing between morals and convenience. It's a hard choice. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. I don't know how people are able to make this choice. Well, but I'm still saying it is a choice.
Yeah, but maybe it's a difficult choice. This is the nationalism piece here, right? Like these guys. So here, Dasha, look. So these guys, right? They grew up in a world where their level of understanding is limited by what they have access to. And people in this classroom, they're not much older than a lot of people in the classroom. Well, a lot of these guys are probably, right? We're all limited. We're all trying to figure shit out, right? We're all nationalistic at some level. It's a little bit different for you because you're living in two different worlds. But all these people here, who are the Americans, when the United States went to war, and we're bombing Iraqis, and 500,000 Iraqi civilians are dying. Nobody here people are waving the flag, "Go America, support our troops." People don't stop and say, "Oh shit, last month, 10,000 Iraqi civilians, mostly women and children, just died from our bombs. I can't support our troops." They're going to still support the troops because they're the troops. That's the nation. That's the flag. That's what it is. Do you have anything? Do you see that? Does it make sense?
It does make sense to a degree to me because I understand. I can put myself in someone else's shoes and look at the situation from a different perspective. Yeah. But at the end of the day, who I am, where my morals stand, and what these people are doing to my people, I understand, as Sonia said, this is a hard decision, but at the end of the day, you have a choice. You can figure it out. And as of me, they are on Ukrainians' territories. They crossed the border. They went, so they automatically they automatically are enemies.
So, right, but they're not necessarily going to see that. They don't necessarily think that, because I can make a really strong argument that they really didn't cross much of a border. You can make that argument. I can make the argument. So, but the idea being they're really, what's an enemy mean? When you look at them, what's it really mean? Because if your family, your whatever, grew up where they grew up, they'd be traveling in that direction. They'd do the same thing.
We can start from 2014, the annexation of Crimea, and now in 2022, the full-scale invasion. I'm getting there.
Right,
I'm getting there.
Right.
And when I'm looking at them, I'm thinking about those people come into my country not with peace. They come into my country to take away lives of innocent people, kids, elderlies. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
That's how you see it.
That's how I see it.
So therefore, and for you can't see it. Can you see it from the Russian? Can you make an argument for the Russian perspective? Can the two of you make an argument? They would be I can make this argument from a Russian perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, I can. So a lot of people know how the government works in Russia, right? So they might not have much choice, and they just go there. So it's easier for them. They would rather go and fight than protest and do something in there. But there's also a lot about what's in their mind, why they're going there to fight. I can't know why they're going to fight. I can't know what they think of us as a nation. Do they think what they're been told, or do they have a different perspective on it and they don't want to fight and they're going there because
No,
just they
because-
don't have a choice,
Because
you know?
they don't have a choice, yeah. A lot of people, they don't have a choice. Here, let me just I want to make an argument really quick. I want to just talk for a second. Can you go to the next slide? And then one more. All right, so listen. So in the Cold War, you all are young here, so let me bring you back. Let me take you back a little bit to before you were born, all right? We divided the U.S. and the USSR, the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, kind of divided the world up into the blue and the red. And the dark blue is NATO, okay? So this is the alliance of NATO in the West. And everything light blue is connected to NATO. The red is the Soviet Union, okay? And then the pink are other nations that were aligned with the Soviet Union. And basically, this was it, man. We were fighting. And this was the side of which is kind of interesting that Russia, like your country, was like the evil empire, man.
From your side.
From our side, yeah. What were we from your side?
I don't know, like from my side it's my country, so like
It's just
your evil
USSR.
side, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's just USSR. That's what it was to your parents and grandparents, right?
yeah.
Yeah, just their nation. And we were the evil empire. And for us, you were the evil empire, which makes it so interesting now when we hear Trump talking so positively about Russia. It's so weird for us, you know what I mean? Because it's like, wait, this was the evil side. Okay, so anyway, it breaks down, right? 1989, everything falls apart. Go to the next slide. And so now you got 1990 here. So here is the Soviet Union, okay? All of these states. All right? And then here we are in 2015. All of these states. And here is Ukraine. All right? So here's Ukraine. So Ukraine was like up in here. Now, Ukraine becomes its own, this is your nation, becomes its own individual nation. But it was part of the Soviet Union. And now it's its own individual nation. And it exists between Russia and NATO. This is all NATO here. Okay? This is all the West. This is all the United States. So do you get this? Do y'all see this? This is really, really important. Right? So here we are. This is NATO. This is the United States and our allies here. And this is the Soviet Union. They're the enemies, the greatest enemy in the world. Like, this is like, oh my God, and we're your greatest enemy in the world. Dude, nice to have you here in class, by the way. And then the Soviet Union breaks down, and these nations that were part of the Soviet Union get aligned with NATO, and you got Ukraine right in the center, man. And NATO says, and Russia says, damn, we lost all these areas here, okay? So you got this? So I'm going to walk you through from a Russian perspective, my friend. We lost all this to NATO. We lost it all. These were our allies. And we're saying, dude, you can't have Ukraine. Like, you got NATO, you can't come take Ukraine, all right? You can't do that. This is what the Soviet Union is saying. Like, you can't do that. And here, let me show you why. Bro, can you go ahead? One? Go one more. Because this is Ukraine. Right? Look, just read through that. That's what Ukraine has right there. It's like, and your country said, this is just a different perspective. His country says, your country, your former country says, Gregory's country says, yo, man, so go back 2 more. Right there. That's all there. You can't take that. And NATO says, okay. And Ukraine, your people say, yeah, but you know what, man? Russia, which is now Russia, yeah, if we look at Russia, the West, we'd rather align ourselves with the West because, like, come on, man, the West is just cooler. No offense, bro. No offense, because Russia's cool too. I got it. But all these Ukrainians, not everybody, but a lot of them are going like, yeah, we want to align ourselves with the West. But the West said, okay, but we won't do that. We won't force this issue, okay? We won't force the issue because we're all fighting a global war with each other. Whether we like it or not, we really are at war with this guy's country, man.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So thing was that if you see, and you might know from history, Germany was divided after World War II into West and East Germany.
Right here.
And East Germany, was under control of Soviets. I might be wrong here, but I think that then Berlin Wall fell down.
We took it down in 1989.
So what happened is basically USSR signed some kind of a pact with NATO countries that we're not going to expand eastwards. And
but we did.
Yeah, and
took Germany. We did Poland.
The thing here is that like USSR collapsed like a year or two after, and NATO said like we made this deal with USSR, not Russia. Yeah. So like you are not USSR. We haven't made a deal with you. And moreover, like in 2000s, Putin asked NATO to be a part of it. He like asked. I think he was talking to Bill Clinton. I might be tripping, but he asked.
Dude,
like,
hang on. You can't say I might be tripping.
Okay.
All right. You can say that in the U.S., but you can't say that,
Okay. So he asked Bill Clinton if Russia can join NATO, and Bill Clinton was like, "Oh yeah, that would be good." And then they told him like, "Nah, you can't join NATO because like, what's the whole point of NATO if you're gonna join?"
Yeah, exactly. We don't have Okay, so listen. So hang on a second, right? So we're not. This isn't taking. You don't have to. Yeah. This isn't taking Putin's side or Russia's side. But my question is this: if you are here, right? You just happen to be from Ukraine, and you know that. You ask the Ukrainians, like, where do you want to go? You want to go this way, or you want to go this way? It's not really that surprising. Dude, nothing against your country, all right? Once again, it's not that surprising that a lot of people are going, like, yeah, I want to go toward the West. But can you see that people are like, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't, these resources, the whole thing, like, you can't do that. Could you see that?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that, but I also can see, I'm going to speak on the behalf of Ukrainians, right? As Ukraine, its own independent, democratic country who wants to join European Union because we're talking about democracy. We're not talking about communism and like other stuff on the other side, and dictatorship. And that would be rational to want to have it for the people, to join it for democracy and go there.
Let me ask you this question though. Now you're a U.S. citizen, right? Well, I mean, you're a U.S. resident. You're going to be a citizen, okay? What happens if Mexico decides, you know what? This is for you too, right? Okay? Mexico decides, we're done with any alliance with the United States. We're actually going to align ourselves with Russia, okay? The enemy of the United States. Little changes a little bit now with Donald Trump, but basically still our enemy, okay? We're going to align ourselves with with Russia, and so all of Mexico is going to be part of Russia. We'll put some nuclear missiles there. We'll do like the whole 9 yards because Mexico's going to really align ourselves with the enemy of the United States. What do you think Americans would say about that? You think we'd be like, yeah, all right, that's cool, no problem, man. Just stay on your side of the border. Or do you think we'd have something to say about that? Even though the citizens of Mexico are saying like, no, we're voting for this. This is what we want. Do you think the United States would be like, okay, that's cool, whatever y'all want?
I mean, there's definitely good sides and bad sides, but I would say the relationship of the United States as a country towards Mexico and the relationship of the United States towards a country like Russia, Like it's a different relationship
think?
that they have.
I got you, but forget
Like-
that. Set that aside for a second, okay? I just want to do a mind test here. Sonia, what do you think Mexico decides? We're aligning with Russia. Everything is all about Russia. It's all good, right?
I cannot talk on behalf of all Americans because I'm also not an American yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, but what do you think the
But
U.S. government would say? Do you think we'd just be like, all right, that's cool, man. You know, you all just like
depends
become-
who stays a president. If it's going to be Trump, then I can see the same thing happening in Russia. Yeah, because Trump is actually, you can see a clear pattern. He's going the same exact direction
Okay,
Putin
so
was
and the
going.
American people would say like,
No,
All
I don't know.
right.
Again, I don't know about American people. I'm saying on behalf of like American government, they would probably want to do something like invasion again or try to control an
wait,
independent
you mean
country.
we would want to invade Mexico? to
Again,
be
not
like-
we, government.
The government
If-
would.
Yeah, if Trump is staying, if everything is like that,
Okay.
as it is right now, yeah, I think that.
Okay, then that means this guy, what we're saying here about Russia in Ukraine, what we're saying about this, it's like, yeah, all right. I mean, well, that kind of that makes sense that people would have that idea, and you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with it. It's
yeah.
just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I was just about to say that it's also not just like about what people want, but international relations, how
Yeah,
it
yeah, I got
affects,
ya.
you know, like what countries,
No, I got
how
you.
they're working together.
I got that.
And
but-
that's another conflict that is coming out of this, you know, say Mexico joining Russia. There's a conflict coming out because of
okay.
international relations that they have.
Can you? Okay, I hear that. Can you go back to the war, to the Russians? So these guys right here, if you grow up with the idea that, like, wait, hang on a second, you tell the story like I just told it. Can you see these guys going like, yeah, we got to go stop this NATO invasion of these lands that are really important to us because of all the resources. Like, man, we're looking out for ourselves. Go back to all that list of resources. Like, this just makes sense. Like, yeah, I gotta like.
Sam, can we ask then, since almost all of people here are Americans, you said if the exact same thing happened with like Mexico
Yeah.
being with Russia and everything, would it be a great way to solve the problem by invading their country or doing something like that? Can you ask the class how many people would think?
I can ask them. I know no one's going to say it would be a good idea to
Exactly.
invade the country. However, no one's going to say that. However, bro, listen. When push came to shove and the American government said, we got to go take Mexico back because the Mexicans decided to go this way and that's too dangerous for us and we got to go take it back, the vast majority of Americans would be waving their flags and supporting the troops because that's what people do. And so when I look at these Russian soldiers here, I'm like, well, they have their own story, okay? And when I look at the fast forward to the Ukrainian soldiers, they have their story. And I'm not saying whose side, there's no side here. We're just talking sociologically to understand enemies. And that we're going to create a story about enemies that makes sense. We're going to create a story that makes sense of who our enemies are. That's how we're going to operate.
But I also think about it as like we're talking about resources, right? And we're talking about NATO. Like Russia obviously doesn't want to have NATO close to them. But 1991 Ukrainian independence, there was a pact signed. And I feel like if it would have stayed the way it was after 1991, we have the protection, you have the resources, countries can work it out. There's a different problem lying there, that it's not just about NATO moving closer to Russia or Russia wanting the resources.
It's everything involved, right? It's everything involved. My point being, these folks here, and bro, can you go to the Ukrainian side? So, bro, you see that these guys, even the only people they're the enemy of are the Russian soldiers who are there firing bullets and missiles at them. But they're not the enemy of you.